This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work responding to another Ask Prof Wolff question from our Patreon community. And this question comes from Bill Allen. And Bill asks a question that I've heard many times. He asks me how I would respond to a friend of his who makes $50,000 to $60,000 a year and is worried that a Medicare for all kind of program, generalized national health insurance for everybody, might hurt such a person, might cost more for medical care than that person now has to expend. How would I go about making the case that that's not the way things are likely to turn out? So let me try to do that briefly and bluntly, because I think it's probably the best way. You don't really want to get lost in the weeds and the details, because there are dozens of medical programs, both private and public, and mixtures of the two. They vary across many dimensions, and that's not really the point. The basic question that Bill Allen poses is the cost, and I think the best way to answer it is with some general overall statistics that apply no matter what the details as they vary. So here we go. The basic truth is this: medical care that is provided as a guaranteed right by a national authority that is either entirely publicly owned and operated or has a mixture of public regulation, public provision of services, together with private provision of services, whatever that is, and there are mixtures, they cost less than the private system here in the United States. Much, much less. The United States has the absolutely dubious distinction of charging more for medical care than anyone else in the advanced industrial world does. And again, the difference is not small, it is huge. So there should be no doubt in your mind that not only will you be better off in terms of the quality and the quantity of care you get at a lower price, but so will everybody else, because once you make health care available to everybody at an affordable rate, which is what Medicare for all is about, your fellow citizens are much healthier. And so you will be too. It doesn't show up necessarily in the statistics, but it is a reality. Many of the diseases you get come from other people who, if they were healthier, if they could afford to go to a doctor every time they think they need it, we would all be better off. We would all have a more productive economy. We would all lose fewer sick days a year, and on and on and on. To make the case stronger, let me explain to you why healthcare is more expensive here in the United States, and therefore why it would be cheaper if we stopped relying on the private medical care system we have. The private producers of medical care in this country, some decades ago, established a conjoint monopoly. What that means is not that one company is the dominant player, but that a group of companies in a group of industries, 4 to be exact, got together, agreeing to cover each other's back in order that all 4 of them could confront the rest of the economy as a monopolist, charging more because you had nowhere else you could go, which is what monopolists do. The 4 industries in the United States can be easily enumerated. Doctors, 1. Hospitals, 2. Drug and device makers, 3. And medical insurance companies, 4. Those 4 got together. They comprise a medical-industrial complex, and they together manage to charge more than anyone else in the world. And by the way, the outcomes, the medical outcomes here in the United States, very mediocre. We're not the worst. We're far from the best. We're somewhere in the middle, but we charge as though we provided the very best. We don't do well on comparisons. Most other countries, for example, in the OECD list of 36 countries, we rank near the bottom in the general access to medical care and the cost thereof for Americans as compared to other countries. So I think if you had a national health care system like Medicare for all, it would be the mechanism, the vehicle, the means by which to break that monopoly, the medical industrial monopoly. Just like we have broken the trusts back in the 19th century, we broke up AT&T because it was a monopolist. We are now discussing what to do about Apple and Amazon and others who are using their monopolistic positions to gouge everybody else and become richer than everybody else in the classic pattern. So yes, I think it is reasonable to say to people who ask you, voting for politicians who support Medicare for all is a step in the direction of the breaking up of the monopoly now operated, which gives us mediocre results while overcharging us in comparison with the rest of the world. Final point. One of the things most other countries do is they buy drugs in bulk and then turn around, because they can get them at a lower price, and pass on the savings to the public. We don't do that in the United States because our government voluntarily refuses to do this, even though it could, and most other countries do. On and on, I could give you examples of the way that the monopoly has been worked. And every effort to deal with this problem has come up with what? The opposition of the medical industrial complex, who gives, when you add up all the four different industries, millions and millions of dollars for media advertisements, millions and millions of dollars for parties and politicians and candidates, and even more millions of dollars for the lobbyists who work on writing the legislation. Every effort to provide quality medical care is labeled socialist. Well, let me end with that. If it's socialist, then the socialist medical system is what almost every other advanced industrial country, and certainly everyone in Western Europe, has long ago adopted. And they have been challenged, and they have been criticized, and the people vote over and over again to hold on to their nationalized medical care system, unless you believe they're all deluded and all stupid and all hoodwinked. And I feel for you if you believe that. But unless you're backward in your thinking, you understand what I'm telling you. Don't be fooled. The program would advantage a person earning $50,000 to $60,000 even more than it would for the super rich, who can, of course, buy medical care. So it is particularly for the people Bill Allen asks about that a Medicare for all system is clearly the better option for themselves personally, as well as for the society as a whole. This is Richard Wolff responding to another Ask Prof Wolff question from our valued Patreon community.